Welcome, foolish mortals, to the Haunted Mansion.
On this bonus episode, you get a on-location recording of my experiences at Awaken The Spirits at the Pasadena Convention Center. You're listening to a bonus episode of the Theme Park Duo podcast.
Prepare yourselves for an unforgettable encounter.
Hi, and welcome to the Theme Park Duo podcast. Grab your park map, churro, and hop in line with us as we take you on a coast-to-coast adventure through the world of theme parks, haunts, conventions, and more. Now, here's your hosts, Nikki and Gabriel.
Please welcome the Midsummer Scream executive team. Co-founder and executive director, David Marklin. Co-founder and executive producer, Gary Baker. Co-founder and supervising producer, Claire Dunlap. And co-founder and creative director, Rick West.
Hey everyone, thanks for indulging us, giving us a few minutes of your time. We did really want to thank you for coming out and making this event happen. It's a very last second thing. We put it together in 2 months thinking that we couldn't do anything at all this summer. So thank you for coming out so much. And if you can, if you see anybody else wearing an orange shirt, please thank them. This is our crew that makes this entire event happen. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Oh my gosh, it is so amazing to see all of your faces. We'll sort of see all of your faces out there. But I can see it's such a great house. You guys have been such a tremendous group of people. We are so excited that we could get all these people together. Thank you for coming out. Thank you so much. Thank you to the White Bats, who are the life's blood of this event. And you guys are all so awesome. Thank you.
What, are you throwing it to me? Again, thank you all for coming out. Dave and I got together at Denny's, of all places, when the COVID restrictions went down. And I said to David, I really think we need to do something in the way of a convention to thank all of you, the Halloween community, who has supported us for so many years with this event. So we put our heads together, and in about a month, I think we said, let's do it. So thank you again. Thank you for supporting us.
And before we go in, sorry, I also want to thank the Pasadena Convention Center, because really the hardest part was finding some place to do it. As you can see, it's a gorgeous place. They really stepped up. They knew what we wanted to do, and they honestly bumped somebody else to make sure we could do this event. So.
And hopefully none of them are here right now.
This is a hell of a thing. Hello, everybody. We've missed you. It's emotional. We missed you guys, and we are here because you are here. You've never gone anywhere, and this is a huge step in the right direction. The next stepping stone is in December. We will see you for Season Screaming. And then next summer, we board the mothership in Long Beach for our 50th anniversary Midsummer Scream show. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. We love you guys, and we would not be here literally without each and every one of you. Thank you.
Wait, I have one more thing to say. There's also for Season Screamings, if y'all didn't see it on social media, there is a special code hidden somewhere around on the show floor, actually in the lobby area, so you can purchase your Season Screaming tickets today with no ticket fees. Hey. But you gotta find the code.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Theme Park Duo podcast. This is a bonus episode for all of you people listening, and you could tell, it's just me. There's no Nikki. It's just Gabe today. So you're stuck with me. I'm sorry. But we are here, and I'm currently sitting outside of the Pasadena Convention Center for Awaken The Spirits by Midsummer Scream, the pop-up Halloween convention that they're doing kind of in place of the traditional Midsummer Scream. So that's what this episode is going to be about. It's going to be about my experiences on the show floor, people I'm meeting, the panels, things of that nature. So hopefully I'll be able to get all the information in, obviously, because without Nikki, who usually is the one that wrangles me and knows everything and keeps me organized, it's going to be a bit different and difficult. So, but first off, let's talk a little bit about the organization that it was coming into the convention center. For us, I was media. I was put in line with the VIP attendees for the convention, and it was very well organized. Basically, I was told where to go, what to do, how long to wait, and we were led into the show floor just a bit early. There is the main show floor that is in the main body of the Pasadena Convention Center, and then there's a little bit of an extra bit off to the side in Hall C. So we were led into Hall C first, where that is where the Halloween Horror Nights kind of like previewed little walkthrough thing was, vendors. And then in the main hall, that's where you'll find, people signing, different shops and different haunts, things of that nature. So it was very well organized, very quick. Actually, probably one of the quickest that I've ever come in contact with, at least in terms of the Midsummer Scream events. And even the Scarlet events before that, because it's the same people in charge. But so far, I'm having an absolute blast. You could feel the energy that's kind of in the air. It's this tingling energy on the back of your neck where everyone's just pumped to be there. Everyone's excited to be there. Everyone's excited to give hugs and say hi to people again. And the mask compliance has been pretty phenomenal. I mean, like, overall, I count on one hand how many people I saw with a mask below their nose, or, somebody just taking it off to take a drink of water, which is totally fine. But overall, I'm really impressed with the mask compliance so far at the event. It actually makes me feel a lot more comfortable, because as excited as I am, still a little bit nervous, still a little bit apprehensive about being in this large environment again with so many people. I mean, I'm double masked up. I have my KN95 mask plus my theme park dual mask. Can you tell I'm trying to be prepared here? So it is reassuring to see how good they have been about making sure the masks are being worn correctly and at all times. Super nice. And then there's so many haunts on the show floor. There's Zombie Joe's, there's Reign of Terror, Six Flags has a booth. As I mentioned, Halloween Horror Nights has like a small little walkthrough, which I did. It was super cute. It was small, short, and it was themed to the Curse of Pandora's box maze that they had in 2019. That's coming back in 2021. And it was one scare, but it was still super fun. So if you guys watch my Instagram stories, you'll see it on there. It's definitely on there. And then, see, what else did we do? I mean, I got a lot of signatures. I bought shirts from Decade Brigade. I kind of tried to do a lot in the early entrance time that I had before the general audience kind of came in. So right now, I just had to stop, take a break, have some food, re-energize before I go wait in line for the upcoming Halloween Horror Nights panel. So if I'm got it correctly, the major panel today, which was like a 13 Ghost panel, got canceled yesterday. It is what it is. So we're still going to be able to see the Halloween Horror Nights panel, which there's two of them, two different ones. Assuming that the Woman John Murdy, we're going to get a pretty big announcement in terms of either maze or scare zones. They haven't announced anything in terms of scare zones yet, so I'm going to assume we'll probably get something along those lines. So I'm really excited for the rest of this weekend. So far, it's been amazing seeing all the people back, everyone, smiling under their masks. It's been really nice to see friends and for anybody listening who doesn't understand the fascination with these things, you're listening to this saying like, oh, I like conventions and stuff, but the Halloween stuff, it's very similar to any other convention that has a fandom. It's these friends are your family, so you're seeing them again, and you get to hug them and enjoy something that you all enjoy together. So that's kind of really what makes it different, and Midsummer really does a good job at bringing those people together and showing that they care about the community, because everyone's here and wants to have a good time. So it's really nice that everyone's here to do it, not cause a stir, not cause a fuss. Everyone's here to enjoy the same thing. Let's get scared. Let's have some fun, Halloween fun, all that stuff. So far, thoroughly enjoying it. But I'm going to sign off here. Going to go get in line soon for the Halloween Horror Nights panel, and then we'll see where the day takes us. I'll talk to you soon. Hello, everybody. Gabe here again. We are sitting in because I have a special guest with me here, It's Greg Condon for Park Journey.
Hey, theme park duo family.
So yeah, we're sitting in the main ballroom of the Awaken the Spirits convention, waiting for the Delusion Haunted Hayride panel. Now, Greg and I actually sat through the first of 2 HHN panels here at the convention, and this one was really going into more of the art side of it and kind of getting a behind-the-scenes process from beginning to end on how they curate different mazes. So in particular, this one, they showed us the behind-the-scenes of the Universal Monsters maze that I believe was 2018's Universal Monsters maze from top to bottom, how they did it from concept to execution. And it was actually kind of cool to get a little bit of a behind-the-scenes aspect, not from the creative director's perspective, but from like the art director's perspective, because it's actually very different.
It's absolutely different. You know, it's they're only overseeing a certain aspect of the event, and not the overall event. So we love hearing from John and Chris on all these different things, but they're kind of at the 10,000 foot level, and the designers that spoke earlier were at the kind of 5,000 foot level, and a little bit more details on what they do to bring the mazes to life, which is great.
And what I found interesting is that they actually brought their workflow image to give everybody an idea of what they do and the kind of level and amount of work that goes into the process of just one maze, because that was just for one maze. They have to go through that for everything, and it was astounding and stressful to look at. It was just a whole bunch of itty-bitty boxes with each step they needed to do and alternatives because of COVID. So it was really interesting to see their process and hear their kind of their real deep love for the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done workflows at work all the time, and I've had a couple that are that severe, but very rarely. And if that's the workflow for each individual maze, you're talking 8 to 10 huge workflows every year to just bring the event to life, not including scare zones and everything else. So that's pretty amazing, to be honest.
It's a lot of things to juggle all at once, and it makes me like realize how talented these people are and that they're able to get these things done in the amount of time that they're given. And it's interesting because even the concept art that Chris Williams handed over to them, if you looked at the date at the bottom of the image, that was finished on January 8th of 2018. So that's how early these things are really getting started, because they're getting started the year prior, and they have the entire year to get it to where we see it. And in my perspective, I'm actually really glad that we got to see the Universal Monsters one, because to me, that if I were to tell people like watch any particular maze to get an idea of what Halloween Horror Nights is, that is the one that I would tell them to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously the last couple of years, any one of those Universal Monster mazes, I think would be a really great example of what Halloween Horror Nights is all about. And obviously those monsters are classic, and it's always fun to kind of see them in the maze setting.
Exactly. So it was actually a really cool panel just because how different it was. So we're excited. We have been primed and ready for the next HHN panel, which happens to fall right after this one. So I'm not quite sure strategy-wise what we're going to do in terms of getting in line and figuring out how to get back in, because they kick everybody out of the ballroom as soon as each panel is done. So I guess we'll figure it out. We'll roll with the punches, and we'll get some HHN goodness after this, after hearing about Delusion and Haunted Hayride. Yes. There's a lot going on. But it's interesting because we actually haven't heard anything at all from Haunted Hayride, like literally nothing. So I'm really interested to hear what information they have regarding the event and where it's going to be and all that kind of stuff. So I'm super pumped, and I've heard a ton about Delusion. I love Delusion. I'm excited for all the information.
Absolutely, yeah. I even heard people asking today, is Hayride a drive-through again? Is it in Pomona again? We're going to hopefully find out today. So hopefully within the next 20 or 30 minutes, we'll know some details about Haunted Hayride.
See, they should just open up the panel with, it's not a drive-through, right? And everybody's going to cheer.
Yeah,
that's all I want to happen. Absolutely. For them to do that.
Absolutely.
But we're going to leave it here for you guys. Next time you hear us, we're probably going to have gone through this panel and the Horror Nights panel. So we have a lot more information ready for you. Stay tuned, everyone. Hello, everybody. It's a bit late now from when I'm recording this. Got out of the LA Haunted Hayride / Delusions panel, immediately went into the HHN panel, which then that immediately led me to dinner, and then I went to Zombie Joe's with a few friends, which if you haven't heard of Zombie Joe's, check them out. Zombie Joe's Underground Theater Group there in North Hollywood. They have some pretty amazing avant-garde performance art. So if that's something you're into, I would definitely highly suggest checking them out. But some of the panels that I wanted to chat about really quickly. Let's start off with LA Haunted Hayride and Delusion. Now, it was kind of a combo 13th floor type panel. With Delusion, it wasn't really any information that we hadn't heard before. It was the open world aspect, there's the VIP, there's the extra stories. This year, they're really trying to go scary as hard as they can. And I think, if anything, for Delusion, they showed images, at least of what they were planning on doing for monsters and things like that, and inspiration, and it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying, and I'm actually really excited because the last iteration of the show was more adventure-oriented. So having it back to its roots, to something scary, something supernatural, I'm really excited about that. And it seemed like all of them were super pumped about it because on the panel it was Ted Doherty, John Cook, John Braver, and I'm forgetting the man's name off the top of my head, but he works for 13th Floor. I can't remember him off the top of my head, but they were all very excited about being scary again. But some of the bigger news came for LA Haunted Hayride, which is coming back to Griffith Park, which they said that it's going to be in a different location just because I think there's some construction happening. So I'm not quite sure if it's going to take the original footprint or part of it or what the plan is, but it is in Griffith Park once again. Now, all of their, mazes, walkthroughs, experiences, they're all being touched and changed in certain ways and plussed, but they are going to have a brand new experience, and that is going to be called the Die-In? The Dead End Diner. Wow, I was way wrong. I have pictures here to remind me because it felt like forever ago today. It's called the Dead End Diner, and it essentially is another part of the town of Midnight Falls, extending the story once again, which I absolutely love, that there's this overarching story with characters, and each maze is part of that story, and so is the hayride. And the one cool thing and concept about this particular experience is the fact that you will run into dead ends where monsters can trick you, and you will run into a dead end and you have to go back the other way and figure a way out. So I know that mazes have done this before in the past. I'm interested to see how this has an impact on wait times, because if you don't have a ton of attractions, how are you going to impact wait times if a lot of people are waiting for it and you have potentially people running around inside not knowing where to go? So it'll be interesting. I like the concept. I think it's nice to have another attraction that's based on the history of what you've built for Midnight Falls. So super duper pumped. Sorry, I'm yawning a lot. I'm tired. It was a very long day. But then moving on to Halloween Horror Nights, John Murdy made his way back here from all the way from Ireland to chat about Halloween Horror Nights. Now, I actually have the audio for this panel. So I'm going to plop that in right here. You can hear the panel in its entirety, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Our next guest is fresh off the plane from Ireland. It's his first time back to Los Angeles since 2019. Please welcome to the stage the one, the only, John Murdy.
Wouldn't it be cool if I did that and like I didn't have a mouth or something? Wow, this is the most people I've seen in one place in like 2 years. How you guys doing? Well, I'm John Murdy. I am the creative director, executive producer of Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Hollywood. And today, what I thought I'd do for everybody is I'd give you a deep dive into one of the mazes that we're doing for this year's event. I brought along a lot of goodies, stuff that nobody has seen, stuff that nobody has heard. I thought we'd also maybe make an announcement. That's cool. But before we do any of that, there's something we gotta do, okay? Last time I saw you guys, right? It's been 2 years. This is where we left off. That moment when everybody got the word that we weren't gonna be having Halloween Horror Nights in 2020, right? And I don't know about you guys, but this is how I felt. Sad. I mean, do you remember? It was heartbreaking. And I'm sure each and every one of you, there's nothing that myself and my partner, Chris Williams, my art director, production designer, and everybody who works on the Halloween Horror Nights team, we've always said this, we do it for you guys, we do it for the fans. So initially it felt like this, and then eventually it felt like this. And I think, we need to exercise those feelings right now. So what I need you to do, each and every one of you in the audience, we need to do a primal scream just to get it out of our system. Don't you feel like you need to do that? I know I do. All right, let's do it on 3. 1, 2, 3. Feels better. And then eventually, as the year went on, it felt like this. And that particular day in 2020, I went on Twitter first thing and I wrote a bunch of stuff. I don't know if you guys remember it or not. And what I kept saying is, the monster always survives, right? Because if you guys know me, I'm a huge Universal Monster fan. And actually, 2020 would have been the 50th year of me being a monster fan, because that was when I started, when I was just 4 years old. And to me, it was like the Universal Monsters. It was like Frankenstein, Every movie, something terrible happens to him, like, getting kicked in the chest and falling into a pit of flaming sulfur. But there's one thing I know from all of those films, and that is, no matter what happens at the end of the movie, the monster always survives, right? And that's what I told you guys on Twitter back in 2020, right? I said, I know this is terrible, it's heartbreaking, everybody feels it, but the monster is going to survive. Halloween Horror Nights is that monster. It's the monster that each and every one of the people who work on our team, all the men and women, have created over the years. It's a monster that we share with all of you, the fans who have supported this event year after year after year. And the monster has survived. So today, I'm going to be taking you guys through a maze we call Universal Monsters, the Bride of Frankenstein. And of course, this is inspired by Universal's 1935 classic monster movie, The Bride of Frankenstein. In fact, it is a sequel to The Bride of Frankenstein. But before we dive into the maze itself, there's always a backstory, okay? And this is going to share with you a little bit about where I'm coming from, how I, got into the Universal Monsters, and everything that led into this moment that we're in right now, which is the last, 3 years of Horror Nights, bringing back the Universal Monsters and making them a signature part of our event. So I grew up as a Universal Monster kid, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this before. That's me, that's my 4th birthday, and what's next to me is the old Aurora monster models. My mother made the mistake of showing me Frankenstein when I was 4 years old, and the story in my family goes that when she came back into the living room, I was crying my eyes out, and then when she got to talk to me, she realized that I wasn't afraid of Frankenstein. I just felt so damn sorry for him. Well, it's the truth. I mean, if you think about the movie Frankenstein, he didn't ask to be born, right? He was stitched together from different body parts, dug out of a grave, and then jolted to life electricity, and then kicked out into the world, right? And asked to deal with it. And everywhere in that film, he's looking for the same thing, friend, friend. And everywhere he goes, he's met with hatred, men with pitchforks, and flaming torches. And so I just instantly sympathized with the monsters, and that's the beginning of becoming a Universal Monster fan. Now, in the 70s, it was kind of a golden age for these movies, right? They were back on television. I don't know if anybody in the audience will remember this, but Seymour's Monster Rally right? On KTLA, every weekend they would run the Universal Monster movies, and that's how I saw all the movies. And there was also great magazines like Famous Monsters of Filmland that had the monsters front and center. And it really was kind of like a renaissance for the monsters in that period. There were toy products. These are the Mego Mad Monsters. There were Super 8 movies that you could watch in your own living room, like the Bride of Frankenstein movie there. But kind of paramount above everything was the Aurora monster models, right? When they released those monster models, I had every single one of them. And I meticulously built them all, and I painted them. And then one 4th of July, my 2 older brothers blew them all up with firecrackers. Destroyed them. If you guys know anything about the Aurora monster models, you know, a kit from that era is worth about $1,500 now, which I constantly remind my brothers of. But monsters seem to be everywhere. And my favorite Aurora monster model, and I'll go on record today as saying this, was the Bride of Frankenstein, right? And that's kind of the genesis for this maze, right? How many of you have seen the Bride of Frankenstein? Okay. You know what's weird about that movie? How long is she in the movie? She's like 5 minutes at the end. It's like, hey, she's born. Oh no, Frankenstein's pulling the switch and blowing up the castle. And she's gone, and she never comes back. Not like Dracula or the Wolfman or the Mummy. She's in one movie, and that's it. But I love this model, and it was my favorite model, so I've always had a special, place in my heart for the Bride. Now, Halloween, of course, was the time to dress up as Universal Monsters. The costume choices were limited in those days. That's me as Frankenstein. That's me as Super Wolfman next to my brother dressed as the hippie. And that's me as the Mummy with blue tennis shoes on. And then I learned that there was this place called Universal Studios Hollywood. And you could go there and you could actually meet the monsters. That's actually me grabbing onto that poor guy playing the Wolfman's hand. I probably followed this guy all over the park, all day long. Wolfman, would you just... The guy's just like, oh God, when's my break? And that's me at Movieland Wax Museum in their Chamber of Horrors, if you guys remember Movieland. So the monsters, the theme parks were the connection from the movies to actually seeing the monsters in the flesh. And this is some old Universal Studios Hollywood history. I don't know how many of you guys remember this, but the Universal Monsters, from the minute the theme park opened, which was when the studio tour, the tram started in 1964, the monsters were always kind of front and center. This is a picture I found in my archive of old images of Universal. The guy with the axe, that's actually Jack Pierce. That's the man who did the makeup for all of the classic monster movies from the 1930s and into the 40s. And as part of the tour in the early days, in the 60s, you could get made up by the Westmore family, right? Those are the guys who did Creature of the Black Lagoon and countless other movies. And that was all part of the studio tour. Then they opened this show. It was called Land of 1,000 Faces. Does anybody remember that? It was 1975 to 1979. Great, I'm the oldest person in the room. But what it was a makeup show. If you go to the theme park today, special effects stage, that's the same place. That's where it was held. And they would take a guy and a girl out of the audience, and they would make them up to be Frankenstein, or the monster, and the Bride of Frankenstein. And then they actually had a wedding ceremony, apparently, at some point. And it's really interesting, if you look at these pictures, that's Forey Ackerman, the guy who ran Famous Monsters magazine, standing off to the side. It appears that the Wolfman is the monster's best man, and I think that's a vampire bride as the maid of honor, and then there's a gorilla. Because why not? The gorilla was actually, he was the mascot of the Animal Actors Show. I found all these old pictures of him running around the Animal Actors Show. But they had a wedding ceremony, and then the next thing that happened, of course, is a child came along. I don't know if anybody remembers this. This is Frankenstein Jr. He was a character that you used to see at the theme park back in the early days of Universal. And then after Castle Dracula, or after Land of 1,000 Faces, came Castle Dracula, which was a much more elaborate show. And it had all the monsters, and it had the Bride of Frankenstein as well. So she was always the through line. She was there from the beginning of the days, the earliest days of the park. This is another picture of Castle Dracula, same theater that I mentioned earlier, where SES is today. What's interesting is if you see the picture of Dracula pointing, if you see that gargoyle, we still have that. Have you guys seen that show up in scare zones and mazes over the years? That's actually from Castle Dracula. It's been in our inventory for years and years and years. And Frankenstein became like the unofficial mascot of the studio tour. Here he is posing with Alfred Hitchcock. And even at Christmas, they tried out Frankenstein. I don't even know what to say. It's Frankenstein, a goat, and the cockatoo from the TV show Beretta, if I'm right about this. So Frankenstein always had a presence, and the monsters always had a presence in the theme park. So when I got to a place where I could start creating and producing my own stuff, my mission in life was always to bring the monsters back to Universal Studios Hollywood, back in the old days with House of Horrors, the walkthrough attraction we had, and everywhere, every project I did, I tried to find a way to squeeze the monsters into it. But honestly, I resisted doing them at Horror Nights for many, many, many years. And honestly, I just didn't know how that would be received, and that's the reason we didn't do it going back to the oldest days. You know, we didn't do the first Universal Monsters proper maze until 2018. Because I love these characters so much, like I was just terrified that if we did something and you guys didn't dig it, I would just be crushed. That would be it. I would just walk off into the sunset. But luckily that didn't happen. Universal Monsters 2018 was by far one of the fans' most favorite mazes of all times. There's the PA. And the Bride of Frankenstein had a role in this maze as well. In the 2018 maze, we had the idea that Dr. Frankenstein was in such a hurry because as you were going through the maze, you went and saw all the villagers out in front of the ruined castle with their pitchforks and torches. So he's in a hurry, and he's trying to assemble the Bride of Frankenstein, but he's running out of time. So we did her as a disassembled creature, which looked like this. And people, you know, in this era of multiverses, I just have, you know, people are always asking me, they're like, so, you know, when you had it all planned out, exactly, you know, how this all was going to work with the Universal Monsters, and I'm like, no. I had the first one planned, and then I had a vague idea that we would do Frankenstein meets the Wolfman in the next year if the first one was successful. But that's as far as we planned it. We didn't plan it very far. So in 2019, we did Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and the bride had a role in this maze as well. The idea here is that the castle burned down, and she was completely torched. So now she was still alive, but she was a disassembled, charred to the bone, you know, corpse. And this proves that we didn't have a multiverse. Because now we have the Bride of Frankenstein lives. And somebody asked me early on, they're like, well, what are you going to do? Because, you know, in your last maze, she was charred and she was lying on the table, you know, disassembled. And I'm like, yes. But you're not applying horror movie logic. Horror movies don't work like that. You can, you know, blow up Michael Myers at the end of Halloween 2 and he comes back just fine. So, this is how she looked in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman in 2019. But now, the legacy continues with The Bride of Frankenstein Lives. And I am very, very proud to say that once again, our good friend Slash is doing an all-new original score for this maze. Would you like to hear something? Now watch this. I'll jinx myself and then it won't work. But yesterday was Friday the 13th, right? Good. Okay. If you wouldn't mind, I'll click to the next slide. We're just going to preview one of the tracks that he's doing right now. This is for the very, very beginning of the maze. Let me see if this works. funny. He texted me just maybe 45 minutes ago, and he's on the road with Guns N' Roses. I don't even know what town he's in, and he's like, "How's it going? How's it going? You know, what's happening?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm about to talk about the Bride." So he said to say hi to everybody. Nicest man in the world. The cool thing, even though last year everything that happened and everybody in lockdown, that guy was constantly texting and checking in. How you doing? Are you okay? We're so honored to have him back and working with us again. It's been such a great collaboration. Let's talk about the idea behind this maze. So, obviously there's the movie we talked about, Bride of Frankenstein, 1935, how she's only in 5 minutes or so of that film, and then she gets blown sky high when the monster says, "We belong dead," pulls the switch. And to give credit where credit is due, this idea actually originated with our sister park at Universal Orlando. We were always talking on the phone and comparing notes. And when we were talking about what we might mutually want to do with the Monster franchise moving forward, one of their designers, and his name's Patrick Brailliard, a really talented designer. Patrick had the initial idea for this, and some of the other folks in Orlando as well. And immediately Chris and I were like, we're in. This is a great idea. We love the idea of taking a female character, because when you look back in horror history, especially some of the older films, there's not a lot of great female monster characters. The Bride is one of the most iconic ones there is, and she's in it for this much. And we thought, she deserves her own story. She deserves her own maze. This is the year of the female monster across the board. As we started to get into this, we had the challenge, of course, if you're telling an original story, which this is us creating a sequel, that never existed. In essence, that's what it is. So you have to think about how you do that storytelling-wise in the context of a maze, because a maze is a lot different than a movie or a TV show. We can't just stop and do a bunch of dialogue in the middle of it. It's loud, it's a chaotic environment. Early on, as Chris and I started talking about this, I kept coming back to Mary Shelley's book, from, I believe, 1918, when she wrote the original Frankenstein, which actually included the Bride in it. It is part of the book. And I thought, well, this would be cool if this was a book that came out later that nobody knows about. And the other thing that was a big inspiration is an artist named Bernie Wrightson. Do you guys know who Bernie Wrightson is or was? Bernie Wrightson was this amazingly talented illustrator that I had the pleasure of working with in my career at one point. And he did an illustrated version of Frankenstein years ago. And if you get a chance, do yourself a favor and buy this book and check it out. You will never see more beautiful drawings than what Bernie created for this book. So we wanted to kind of combine that idea of a book, and what you're looking at, this is the actual facade for the maze. We created a giant old Victorian book that's open to the title page, and the reason it's a little bit off-center on the side where you see the black and white images is because the door is in the middle. So we wanted the book open to the title page. A lot of books from this era, they would always have this type of layout and artwork. So we wanted you to literally walk into the story, and we wanted to use that idea of a book or chapters as a reoccurring transitional element that we would, that you'd encounter as a guest as you walk through the maze, both with imagery, with pictures, with a little bit of writing, and also with voiceover, because in this maze, the bride talks. Just like Frankenstein learned to talk by the Bride of Frankenstein, and the Bride of Frankenstein lives, the bride has learned to talk. And what she's doing is she's telling you this story. And it's probably years, it's much, more into the future, and she's telling the story about what happened. And you're going to hear that narration as you go through the maze along with the images of the book. So let's zoom in for a close-up. And by the way, this is by a very talented artist named Lucas Colshaw. Did you guys go through Holidays in Hell in 2019? Okay, all those amazing postcards and images, the nursery paintings in the nursery scene, that's all Lucas Colshaw. Lucas has been with Chris and I since the very beginning. He's always been our illustrator who does all the character drawings. So we turned Lucas loose, for this maze to do original artwork. So this is the title page. And I'm going to zoom in on this because I just think, I want this on a t-shirt. I know. Somebody make a t-shirt of this for me. very much in that same kind of line art style that Bernie did years ago. But that's Lucas's. That's what you'd call a cameo in Victorian, era. There was a lot of paintings that were like this. There were a lot of photographs that were done like this. So this is Lucas's version of a cameo. And if you look at it real close, you get all the little details that relate to the story. There's an Easter egg. So when we did this illustration, Lucas and Chris and I were talking. We're like, God, I feel like something's missing. It just feels kind of empty on the bottom. And Lucas goes, well, in those days they would always list the publishers. So I went, oh, okay. So we can have some fun with this. So it's printed in London, printed for Williams. It's Chris Williams. Coleshaw, it's Lucas Coleshaw. I didn't feel good about putting my last name up there. It just felt wrong, so I changed it to Murdoch. It didn't sound English enough. And then Hudson, that's an inside reference to our good friend Slash. That's his real last name. And then Quinalty is a gentleman named Stacy Quinalty who works with Slash and does all of the, produces all of those tracks that you're hearing. That's also Stacy's work. And he's in charge of all of the audio for the mazes as well. And then there's the illustration. So this moment captures the end of Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. We belong dead. The monster has just thrown the switch. The explosion's gone off. The castle is starting to crumble, and you can see the bride in the distance. But then when you go into the maze, I'll back up for a second. I mentioned the bride speaks. So in her voice, we hear her out front as you're waiting to go inside. She says, "My story begins where his story ended, but monsters never truly die." So the first thing you see once you walk through the book is the prologue page, which is this image. And the explosion has happened. The bride has survived because she's a monster. She can do that. But the monster has been trapped underneath all this rubble. Huge beams have fallen from the ceiling. Somehow we jumped like 3 slides. Do you want to manually go back, or do you want me to? There we go. One more. One more back. There you go. Thank you. It's probably my fault. I probably touched it. And his legs are completely shattered. And she sees him, and the prologue is called "Something Survived." And then she has to make a decision. So, the power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you. There we go. I won't touch it. I'll leave it right here. So she has to make a decision, and the decision is, does she save the monster or not? And she decides to save him, and the reason is because even though she got a little freaked out and screamed at him, he's the only one in her short life that showed him any kindness. So she decides that she has to save him. So this is the first time she finds a voice and says something. You see that prologue image, then you walk inside, and then we reproduce that scene 3-dimensionally for you. You see the monster trapped underneath the huge pillars, and the bride is trying to free him, and she screams primally, and the scream turns into the word dead. So the monster is almost devoid of life at this point. The next chapter is called Saving the Monster, and at this point, you see the bride, and she's got the monster over her shoulder, and she's carrying him through the woods. You can see the smoldering castle away in the distance, but you see something else in the foreground. You see 3 figures. And then the bride in this scene, she goes through 4 different costume iterations and some makeup iterations throughout the course of this maze, because we're telling this story of her adventure from going from the beginning, or I should say the end of Bride of Frankenstein, to her assuming the role as doctor at the end of the maze. So each of these iterations has a different wardrobe touch. So this is her traveling cloak look. You can see by her costume that she's, the whole one side of her costume is badly burned, and her face, she's got this horrible scar from the fire. And she says, "I had to save him, but the world outside the castle walls was full of monsters." And what monsters is that? The Brides of Dracula from 1931. So hovering around the outside of the castle are the Brides of Dracula. Now, we've done the Brides of Dracula. We did them in 2018 for the Universal Monsters Maze. So we're basically treating them like the 31 film, where there's 3 of them. They're almost like sisters, although each of them is going to have a distinct look. So one of them will have red hair, and one of them will have blonde hair, and one of them will be a brunette. But they're all going to be taking off from what we started in 2018. And the bride has to get the monster somewhere, and she doesn't know where she is. She's lost in the woods, but she comes across the ruins of an old cottage that's completely ravaged by fire. And it's a throwback, and there's a couple of throwbacks in this maze, nodding back to 1935 and the classic film Bride of Frankenstein. This is the old blind man's cottage, but he's long gone. It's a charred wreck. As you remember at the end of that scene, it all caught on fire and Frankenstein went running. So she takes the monster here. This is her sanctuary, initially. And if you remember that scene with the old man in Bride of Frankenstein, there's that great scene where he lets him go to sleep in his bed and he's praying, and there's a cross up on the wall, if you remember that scene from the movie. So this is one of Chris's illustrations, an elevation for the scene where we come in, the monster is laid out on the bed, devoid of life. The cross is missing. You see the burnt imprint of it on the wall. The Bride of Frankenstein is using the cross, so she's trying to protect the monster, and then the vampire brides come busting in, and she uses the cross to repel them, because vampires don't like crosses. And we're building this special effect hand-prop cross that has like burning embers in it and everything, so she can activate it when she does her action in the scene. But then she takes that cross and she sharpens the ends of it and turns it into a cross/stake. And her next iteration is Vampire Hunter. So as the story goes on, the Bride of Frankenstein is constantly being pursued by these vampires, and so she becomes, in essence, a vampire hunter. The name of this chapter is The Hunted Becomes the Hunter. And here you can see her, and she's all vampire monstered out. In fact, this is her costume. So she's got like a leather bandolier with all of these little cross stakes that have been sharpened into vampire stakes. She still has the remnants of her original gown, but it's been shortened. And each time we see her, she takes a different step forward onto her journey of becoming empowered and becoming the Doctor. And at this point, she says, "I hunted them and others like them across the land and across the years, for they held the secret to eternal life." So the Bride of Frankenstein in this maze is trying to figure out what she can do to bring the monster back. And she eventually realizes that the secret to life is in the blood of all these vampires, right? Because vampires live forever. They have eternal life. And like Dracula says in 1931, the blood is life. And so she realizes that she needs to harvest the blood of these vampires in order to bring the monster back to life. So there's a lot of killing that takes place at this point. But we needed a place for her to go to once the cottage is overrun. I think a lot of you guys know I don't live in this country anymore. I live in Ireland. I have since 2017. One advantage to me living in Ireland and going back and forth is I'm always driving around. In Ireland, you could just turn a corner and it's like, oh, look at that 800-year-old ruined church, and taking pictures, and I'm sending it to Chris all the time. I go to graveyards a lot. Take pictures of old graves and go, oh, this would be awesome for this scene. This is an actual cathedral in Ireland, in Dunlewy. What I liked about it is, in other pictures you see of it, it's like nature has reclaimed it. It's all covered in vines, and it's been standing for centuries. So I gave this as inspiration to Chris, because I said, well, if I was the bride and I'm being pursued by vampires and I need to take the monster to a sanctuary that the vampires aren't going to want to go into, it's going to be a church. So this is Chris's elevation of the front of the church, all overgrown with vines. And this is where one of the first vampire bride, or Dracula's bride, bites the dust. Because the bride says, the world hated us, so we left the world behind, but evil soon followed. So even though she thinks she's safe in this church that she's going to turn into her new lab, evil still follows her. But she gets one of them. So these vampire brides have different iterations as well. Each one of them have 3 iterations. This is the staked look. So this particular bride has gotten a stake driven through her heart. She's bleeding out of every orifice on her face, her eyes, her nose, her mouth. And her skin, in this case, is starting to burn and blister. So that's the look of this character. And then when we get inside the church, we hit the next chapter of the story. It's called The Creation Becomes the Creator. Now the Bride of Frankenstein has assumed the role of Dr. Frankenstein. And she's doing all these experiments. She's trying to figure out the secret to eternal life. She's trying to bring the monster back from the dead. And there's all these vials and jars of blood. So she's harvesting the blood of these vampires. and pumping it into the monster. And this is the illustration Lucas did for our doctor version of the Bride. And when you first see her in the lab, because this, we had a lab scene in 2018, and this time we went, let's do 2 lab scenes. Why not? So the first time you see her in the lab, when she's got the monster on the table and he's still missing his legs, and she starts pumping all this blood, she's literally draining it out of one of the vampires that she's caught and pumping it into the monster, and there's boiling blood, and there's all of this different kind of lab equipment, but it's a little bit more steam driven because we're a little bit more in the future. Chris did another illustration. This is an elevation of it. It's a lot going on in there. It's a little bit hard to read. But you see the vampire bride with all these tubes hooked up to her, sucking the blood out of her. And you see that they're still in a church, but she set this place up like her lab. Also in this lab, as you get to the end of it, there's cages. And there's vampire brides in the cages. And it's the 2 other ones that we saw at the very beginning. Only now, the Bride of Frankenstein has been doing a lot of experimentation on them. Before she got around to figuring out, oh, it's the blood, she did a lot of exploratory surgery. So one of them we call stitches, and one of them we call crosses. So stitches, she just cut open her head and was like, what's in here? Let's see, let's pull this out. Oh, let me cut another piece. So this one's just part of her hair is missing, and she's got stitches all over the place. And the other one was obviously she just didn't want to deal with her and went, stuck the cross up against her forehead and burned it in. And this is where it gets dark, because she's still a monster. As much as we're celebrating and saying we're empowering this character for the first time, she's a monster. Monsters do bad stuff. She's captured all these vampires in order to drain the blood to bring the monster back to life. But that, until you're ready to drain them, that means you gotta feed them. That means you gotta feed them blood, because that's the only thing the vampires subsist on. So there's a place called the feeding cages that you have to go through, and there's all these vampires in there, and bodies everywhere, and blood everywhere, and the vampires eventually break out. So on the night she's going to bring the monster back to life, she's got a problem. There's still 2 vampires running around trying to get her. Now this part, as we go under the church and we're in the catacombs, this is very much inspired by the catacomb scenes from the Bride of Frankenstein. Specifically this gate. Chris always focuses in on a particular detail, and he must have liked this gate, because when I looked at his elevation for it, I was like, oh, he's doing the gate, he's doing the catacombs. So you're going to be going underneath here. You go through the feeding rooms, you go deeper into the catacombs, and it's kind of a cat and mouse game at this point between the bride and the vampire brides. But another one bites the dust. Stitches meets her end in this section. She gets staked through the heart. And the bride has a great line in this. The vampire brides are getting cocky at this point, and they're doing their snake-like voices, saying, we're immortal, we can't be killed, and they're taunting the bride. So when she gets her, she says, "The devil can have you back." And then we get to chapter 5, which is called Live Again, and now it's the night that the Bride of Frankenstein is going to bring the monster back to life. So there's another second part of the lab, big, huge gurney, and now the monster has been fully reassembled. Maybe not fully reassembled. And she gets to do the recall to Bride of Frankenstein to Dr. Pretorius' line, "In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God." But this meant the monster needed a little bit of a revamp as well. This is the monster from our 2018 maze. That's the sculpt that Patrick McGee and McGee Effects did. And then that's the monster in the maze. So we kind of treated the monster kind of like how we treated the bride in 2018. She's in the middle of trying to reassemble him when these vampire brides crash the party. So she doesn't quite finish everything up. So she hasn't finished the top of his head, so his brain is partially exposed. Some of the electrical bolts have been replaced by catheters in places that you can hook up the blood. And we made him a stilt walker, so he's 8 foot tall. So when she put his legs back on, he got taller. So he's 8 foot tall in this maze coming at you. And of course, once she flows the switch and brings him to life, she gets to say the classic line from the original Frankenstein, "It's alive." But there's still one more vampire out there. This is Lucas's piece of artwork for the kind of coda at the end, chapter 6, The Monster Reborn. I love how he reflected the image of the monster's hand coming to life in the glasses the bride is wearing. But there's still one more vampire out there. So before you get to the end of the maze, Crosses gets it. And that is the Bride of Frankenstein Lives. You want to see a little sneak peek of what this maze is going to look like? Yeah. Makeup test. So this is a makeup test we just did this week. Whenever we're doing makeup, prosthetic makeup, we always test it out first before we do it for real with the actors. So this is our bride character as the doctor with her full burn prosthetic. But wait, there's more. We get to the end of the maze. You know, this maze exits on French Street. It just seemed natural to do a scare zone, kind of related to this whole thing. So we're doing Universal Monsters Silver Scream Queens. All right. So I said this was the year of the woman, the female monster, right? It's about time. Amen. So we thought it would be really cool to dig deep into the Universal catalog and find some female characters from the past that have probably never, you know, had stories like this told about them since the original films, and do a female-centric scare zone that is the ending of the maze. So when you come out of this maze, you're going to see the bride triumphant as the doctor. You're going to see the still-walking Frankenstein's monster as well. But you're going to see female archetypes of some of the classic Universal monster characters, you know, mummy, werewolf, vampire. We call it Silver Screen Queens. And then in addition to this, as part of the decor of the scare zone, we thought it would be really cool to make trailers for each of these movies and the overall theme of the scare zone. But to try to do them in the style of those old 1930s and 40s trailers, right? So like this. Men run in fear, their courage vanishes, shrinking at the sight of the Silver Screen Queens. Oxynomen the Mummy, the She-Wolf of London, and Dracula's daughter. Okay, so that means we had to design new characters, right? So there's more than I'm going to show you, because some of them are going to be in traditional makeup and some of them are going to be masked characters. So we're doing both for each character. So there's kind of like a young version of the Mummy that's a little bit more like Ardith Bay, if you know that character that Boris Karloff played in the 1932 Mummy movie. And then there's ones that are like they just popped open, you know, the sarcophagus after 2,000 or 3,000 years, and it's all decrepit. And this is the decrepit version of Oxynomen. Now, who is that character? In history, that is the Princess of King Tut. But in monster history, 1932, that is the woman that Boris Karloff's character is trying to resurrect. That's the princess he wants to bring back to life. So we brought her back to life as part of the scare zone. And of course, she gets her own trailer. From the banks of the Nile. From the tomb of the Valley of the Kings. And you won't hear me doing this. Rises Egypt's Queen of Terror. Easter egg, Universal Monsters Maze. Oxynomen the Mummy. So this is all playing in the scare zone, but we're also doing female vampire character. We're going to do a traditional makeup one, but we're also doing this one that looks something like this, and this is inspired by Dracula's Daughter, which is an actual Universal movie from the late 1930s. So here's a little bit of the fake trailer for Dracula's Daughter. So I just watched a whole bunch of old trailers one day and just sat there, well, I'll just write a bunch of trailers. And then there's the werewolf character, She-Wolf of London. We're going to do this both as a full prosthetic makeup, like mid-transformation, and then a fully transformed one. So this is the prosthetic version. And here's her trailer. And there's no audio on this because Slash is providing that. He's doing a whole piece just for the scare zone as well. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor of what we're doing with that scare zone. All right. Okay. So, it seems like we should maybe make a little bit of an announcement. Is there anything you guys are waiting to hear about? Frequent fear package. There will be things coming in the days ahead, things that may have something to do with what you're talking about, but they should be coming in mere days ahead. But what I wanted to talk about was the fact that this is coming back. Terror Time is going to return for Halloween Horror Nights 2021. I'm not going to tell you the theme today. Sorry. You gotta, you just gotta give little crumbs until we get a little further along, and then we'll be there. But we did want to be able to tell you, I actually asked for permission. I'm like, can I just tell them the Terror Tram's coming back? Because I'm so tired of being asked that question, like, constantly. So, yes, Terror Tram is going to be a part of Horror Nights 2021. You know, if you wasn't there in 2019, a lot of you told us you wanted it back, right? We do listen to the fans, so it's back. And now we have to do some fan appreciation, okay? So, I brought with me this. I'll read it. Take my glasses off and read it. 15 years, man. 15 years of Horror Nights. Not everything works. Congratulations, you are invited to experience Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Hollywood with 2 complimentary Universal Express tickets, including event admission. Well, I hope so. Here are some front of line tickets, but we're not going to include the admission. Here, have fun. Including event admission. Well, I guess you have to spell it out. And an exclusive behind-the-scenes maze tour with presumably me. So, we do this every time. This is a tradition of Midsummer Scream. We ask a trivia question, right? I pick randomly the first person I see. You can't see anything if you're up here, all you see is lights. So I pick somebody. They have to answer the question. If they get it correct, they will win 2 Universal Express tickets, including admission, and an exclusive behind-the-scenes tour with yours truly for Halloween Horror Nights. So, before I do this, though, there's something we absolutely have to do, and that is to say, oh, that hurts. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. 2020 was tough. It was tough. I'm sure it was tough for all of you, right? And Halloween was tough. I mean, I was in Ireland. I was just hoping to go trick-or-treating with the kids. That was, I'd gone from, producing this wonderful event for all of you, wonderful people, to, I just hope I can go trick-or-treating with my kids, just maybe 2 houses, and then that got canceled. So, I did a haunted house in my house for 2 people. So desperate for anything, Halloween. Because as you can see from this presentation, ever since I was a wee lad, as they say in Ireland, Halloween's been my favorite time of year, and I know you guys feel the same way. But what it really brought home for me on a personal level, and I know I'm speaking for every single person at Universal and everybody who works on this event, is when you don't have something that you love doing, man, do you miss it. And what you particularly realize is how grateful you are to each and every person who has supported this event. I mean, I said this is my 15th year. It should be 16th, but it's 15th, of doing Horror Nights, And that is such an honor and a privilege to get to do that for all of you guys, to get to see people go through all of this work that everybody on this team works year-round, nowadays, more than a year-round, because I've been working on 2022 for 4 months. No spoilers, though. We're not be talking about that. But you really realize just how important this community is of people that are like-minded people that love scary stuff, right? And when you guys weren't there, man, did we miss you. So I just wanted to say on behalf of everybody at Universal, thank you so much for supporting this event. It means the world to everybody who works on this project. You guys are the best and the most loyal fans, and thank you. And now I'm going to break your heart. Because this question is, well, it's not that tough. I don't know, it might be tough.
Really did not expect to get a beat by beat of what the story is going to be for the Bride of Frankenstein Lives here at Universal Studios Hollywood for Halloween Horror Nights. It's actually really cool to see how the story progresses, because if you would have just gone through, maybe you'll miss a couple pieces of the story and it doesn't necessarily come together as well as you'd think it was. So it's kind of cool to hear the story separate from the experience, so you can kind of have a very clear understanding of what they're trying to go for. And I actually really appreciate it, because there's a lot of effort put into that, and for guests going through and, you know, their attention is being pulled in other directions, and you never really have a full opportunity to really take in the story. So that's why I liked having that opportunity. But they did announce a couple things. They announced the Terror Tram was coming back, but John did not tell us what the theme was going to be. He just said it's going to come back. So we have, that alone is a big piece of news. But other than that, we have a Scare Zone announcement, which, you know, it, depending on how you view it, Scare Zone / extension of the maze. But this is going to be a Scare Zone that's going to be taken on the Parisian street right next to the Parisian courtyard, which is where the Bride of Frankenstein Live is going to take place. So it makes sense that the Scare Zone is sort of connected to it. And it's going to be called Universal Monsters Silver Scream Queens. Now, a lot of these monsters are going to be female monsters, and in different forms. So one is the Bride of Frankenstein Lives Anuk Sunamun, the mummy, and she's going to be coming in like a few different forms. Dracula's daughters, She-Wolf of London. She-Wolf of London, they used the image of the werewolf that was in the Trick or Treat Scare Zone from 2018. So I'm assuming something similar to that. But I like the idea. I like the concept. We're going to see how it's executed. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Because in my mind, I can't really imagine what the set design, at least for the Scare Zone, is going to be. And the reason why I hesitate to use the word Scare Zone is, like, although it is technically a Scare Zone, it's an extension of the maze in terms of thematics. And you have to go through the maze in order to go through the Scare Zone. I feel like if you were to call it a Scare Zone, you are forced to go through it, not I can't go through it anytime I want. I have to go through the maze in order to go through it. So, small issues, but I mean nothing huge. But I like the concept. I like the difference. I like that we have a maze that is really focused on a female character and a whole Scare Zone focused on female characters. So I think that's really, really neat and really, really cool. So I'm really excited to hear more about them in the coming weeks and hear more about the reveals that we have not heard of yet. So, but that pretty much ended day one. Day one was pretty phenomenal. Big kudos and shout out to all of the White Bats running the event and all the creative team. They were able to put together a phenomenal show in a very, very short period of time, which was astounding to be fairly honest. So everything ran pretty damn smoothly. I was impressed by the mask rules and people actually listening, people being respectful. It was really, really nice. And above all, I mean, I think it was just nice to kind of be back. So I'm going to end this here. I'm going to get some rest, wake up bright and early for day 2 of Awaken the Spirits. And we're going to be doing the Fright Fest panel and the Queen Mary's Dark Harbor panel, which I don't know if they're going to even mention anything about the Queen Mary at the moment. But if you want to have a little information about that, you can definitely Google it. You'll know what I'm talking about. So anyway, we will talk to you soon.
For nearly 30 years, Six Flags Magic Mountain has hosted Fright Fest, turning the 260-acre park into a massive haunt event featuring mazes, monsters, and live entertainment. We are thrilled to have members of Team Magic join us today to reveal what's in store for fans this Halloween. Please welcome to the stage Creative Director Mark Wing, Costume Designer Michelle Litt, Makeup Artist Renee Branch, and Publicist Alex French.
Awaken the Spirits event. Well, without further ado, you guys, Halloween is back, and this is Fright Fest, in case you guys are wondering.
I'm ready.
How excited are we that Fright Fest is back?
I am so excited. I just want to say it is so amazing to be back at a haunt, guys, a haunt convention. So thank you.
And so, Fright Fest this year, you guys, we are back with more dates than ever. We have 24 nights of Fright Fest. So there's plenty of times for you guys to come more than once, get all the scares, and have a great time. And we have a little something else. We had someone else that wanted to say a few things to you guys as well before we get started.
Hey there, everybody, at Awaken The Spirits. This is Scott Frankenstein, the makeup design head at Six Flags Magic Mountain Fright Fest. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but I've got a great bunch of people there that you can ask questions of, and I look forward to seeing all of you guys when you come to Fright Fest this year for Fright Fest 2021. Enjoy Awaken The Spirits.
Well, obviously you guys know who that is. That is Mr. Scott Ramp, our makeup designer for Fright Fest, and the head of Scream Team. We have our amazing makeup team as well. I have the honor to work with him every single night. So, yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I happen to have brought some friends with me. Yeah! Guys?
People that wanted to say hi.
Yes. Obviously, you guys see the little one crawling back here. That's Innocent. Say hi to Innocent. Woo!
All right, so to get things rolling, we want to just go through and remind you guys what Fright Fest is, the product that we have, and we'll take it over to Mark to get a little bit of inspiration behind our mazes.
So yeah, obviously we have so many attractions and so many different themes for such a variety, and that's what makes Fright Fest so special. Obviously you see Red's Revenge right there. Red's Revenge is actually an attraction we've had for a very long time. I was very inspired by all of the fantasy things that were coming out back in 2014 roughly. We had like Once Upon a Time from Disney, and we had some amazing movie franchises that were coming out, and so I was like, it's time for a fantasy. Plus, we had the amazing hit of our Scare Zone Nightmares, a twisted fantasy, which was our first Chroma Depth 3D Scare Zone. So it was just an honor to work with the amazing team over at Little Spider Creations for this attraction. They help so much, and they help so much with our events, not just us, but other Six Flags parks. And yeah, it's an amazing, it's one of our first really theatrically themed mazes that we have in our park besides our abilities. And ever since then, we started doing more and more. Hello there.
Michelle, what goes into the costume design when you're creating a new maze or even bringing back a new maze?
There's so much that goes into it. Mark and I are great friends, and we usually bounce ideas off of each other. We get inspired by things that are nostalgic to us, like movies and things we grew up in the 80s.
I'm an 80s child, sorry, love it. We're both.
Sometimes it's the fabrics that call to us. Sometimes it's
we really just like, we go to downtown LA. Obviously, if you've been to the garment district and the fabric district down there, that's such a big inspiration. We can be inspired by a character, we can be inspired by a simple color, to be honest with you, that can just trigger something. So every single thing that you see.
What about this next maze for Condemned? That one was recently added.
Yes. So that is our hoarder attraction. And it's amazing. The detail that went into that attraction. We have an amazing scenic team. One of our heads of our scenic, Melissa Franson, if you guys are aware of her, she does a lot of the scenic, works with me a lot to design everything that you see scenically in scare zones and in mazes. We also work with another great company with this one, and we are just so proud of this one because there's so many hides in here, it's not even funny.
Super terrifying. I don't know, I'm not a big Fright Fest person. I mean, I love Fright Fest, but I get scared really easily, so they do great. What about Renee? Anything to add from the makeup side? Like, what draws your inspiration?
Well, between Mr. Ramp and Mr. Wing, they come and they say, okay, this is what we're looking at, this is the direction that we'd like to go, but they give us so much creative freedom that it's just super enjoyable to work with them throughout this entire season. So I do Innocence makeup. She is my favorite character to do, obviously, and just a delight to work with. That makeup is a big makeup. It's an icon character for us, and each year I try to improve upon it. I try to make sure that she looks the best that she can look, so that when all of you come, you can take pictures, video, and she always just is picture perfect for you. For anything else, like the new looks that we have coming up, Mark does give us little lookbooks and say, like, this is where we want to go with it, this is what we want to do, but we trust you, so let's see where we can go. So this is the starting point for one of our new makeups, and we'll see where it goes from there.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it. They're amazing.
Also returning, you guys, we have Vault 666 Unlocked. And that one I know has always been a fan favorite. You can clap, it's okay. You can clap.
Yeah, Vault 666 has gone through so many transformations since we created it originally. From an experimental site with different creatures and animals and stuff, very Dr. Island, Dr. Monroe. That was my inspiration for that one originally. To Hellfest, the movie, to what it is now, which is play on like the dark goblin market and a sinister character known as the Shadow Man. So it's been, that one's has probably seen one of the most changes, and it's just a unique one, especially with every year we try to do something different with the costumes and Michelle and the makeup. So I'm gonna let Michelle talk a little more on that one.
Yeah, we just work well together to create these new, unique characters. I feel like we're really good about iconic, unique characters. We have a lot of fun making them creepy and using a lot of things like sandpaper and cheese graters and serrated knives and things like that just to...
From your household cleanings, like brush supplies, we do all types of techniques to distress and to... Scott has actually been a great mentor, Mr. Ramp, on utilizing the most random things to create unique sculpts and paints and stuff like that. So.
You guys, Innocence is coming this way. She's freaking me out. Stay on the other side over there. Okay, so Aftermath 2 Chaos Rising is actually the largest outdoor maze. We are so excited to bringing this one back, and I believe we have a few new touches inside that we're doing, moving some things around.
Yeah, there's some minor tweaks to it. Every year we always try to tweak things up to change some elements to try to make it new and fresh. So yeah, I'm not going to tell you exactly what they are. We want to leave it as a surprise. You have to come out to Fright Fest to see it. But this is our over 40,000 square foot attraction. A lot of the set pieces that you see are actually, fun fact, are from the original Batman stunt show that we had at the park. Yeah, we miss it. We definitely do. But yeah, this one was my very first maze I ever designed, the original Aftermath in the Action Theater. And it was it was actually one of our biggest challenges, because getting large scenic from RVs to a plane crashing into a building. It was something definitely challenging yet fun, and that's how we really developed our scenic department, is through that attraction.
And we have so many talent in that maze to dress.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of military, we want to get that right. And also just those iconic characters like we said before.
Yeah.
And something new, we're always challenging ourselves to push ourselves to do better. We can always do
Correct.
something new.
Yeah, and thanks to the team over at Immortal Mask, they helped us out with that attraction and did some stuff for us, and we really, really appreciate it. And it's the best part of my job, is being able to work with so many haunt companies. Just to, obviously, we want to help them out as much as they help us out, and they really make an impact with us. So thank you to our vendors. We appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Another favorite, Sewer of Souls, up at the top of the hill by Exile Hill. That's right. You can
I love
scream
this
and
maze.
shout.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, so Renee, speak to that. What goes into this one? This one's so unique with the black light and everything else in it.
That's why I love this maze, because the UV makeup for this is so fun to do. Any of the UV stuff we have around the park is a challenge. We love to do it. We love to see how it translates out in the park. And for this particular maze, I just thought the first time I went through it myself that it was really, really unique, because it was just mind-blowing to me, especially the 3D technique of it and everything else. This is definitely my personal favorite. Yeah.
Definitely a good one.
Yeah, this one's one really fun, and it was a surprise hit. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, in our first room, we have a big pile of bat poop. I wanna be honest. And just the reaction and everybody coming in and through the attraction, and it was rated at opening year as the top maze of our park, which the team, the leadership team that ran that attraction, and our cast, they did such a fantastic job that opening year, so.
No sins, no touching. And last but not least for the mazes, Willoughby's Resurrected.
Yes, Maggie's home.
I think this is where Innocence is trying to find her way. She's a little lost over there, keeps coming this way.
That is her home.
That is her home, yes. Willoughby's Resurrected. Actually, Willoughby's was one of the very first attractions ever at Fright Fest. The event obviously kicked off in 1993, and what's called Willoughby's was introduced in the 90s. The original concept was they were very much like your Addams Family, very awkward and weird family. But in 2012, we decided to transform it and give it a new face look. And that was one of my biggest challenges, is making them scarier and darker and nastier and creating stories for each of the characters. So Little Innocence here was actually developed by multiple people. I created her basic backstory and a quick little sketch that I gave to some of our artists. And those of you who are very familiar with the amazing Mike Spatola, Emmy-nominated makeup artist. Yes. He was the original makeup artist for Innocence. And then it went and transitioned into multiple artists, including Rod Maxwell. And then we have our amazing, artist Clinton. And then as of last year, Renee took over her. So she is definitely an icon character, and thanks to so many people, including our costume team and Scott Ram, who made the amazing sculpt on her. But yeah, we can't thank them enough.
And it's a beautiful maze. When you walk through it, take your time in some of the rooms, because there are things that people never see in the maze. There are so many different effects that people you gotta look up, you've gotta look behind things, you've gotta look everywhere. It's just a beautifully eerie maze.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the details that went into that attraction. There's some that are actual very old relics in there, actually, including the carriage, and there's a wicker casket that is actually a wicker casket that we got back east. So there's a lot of detail in that attraction.
Is the casket used? Do we know?
I don't know what they do there.
Just wondering.
But it's a classic, everybody loves it, and that's why we keep bringing it back.
Yes. So along with our mazes, as you guys know, we also have scare zones set up throughout the entire park. And it's just something to add. Yeah, get some love for the scare zones. Yeah, we want to add that fright as you guys are going from maze to maze. And if you don't know, Fright Fest, we don't close the park. We keep the park open the entire night. You can come during the day, 7 o'clock, Fright Fest starts, and that's when the crazy little monsters like this one over here in the green start rolling around.
Oh boy.
Yes, you. But we always want to up the fright, right? We want to make it bigger, better. We are the thrill capital of the world. We always go big. Exactly. I heard that. So new for 2021, we have some exciting news to share. The Dead Zone, the attic.
So if you look to my left, this is a new character actually in the Dead Zone. So our theme is cyberpunk zombies. So yeah, obviously we're so excited. This will be one of our largest scare zones we've ever done. It's going to be in the underground, the new area where West Coast Racers is located. And it's going to be such a unique area, utilizing LED lighting, makeup, amazing costume by Michelle and our costume team. Every single character is unique, different, and just so much layers and details that go into them. So it's going to be a wow zone, definitely.
Michelle, what went into the creative behind this amazing costume that you put together?
So usually when I start thinking of a new area, I kind of fill my brain with as much as I can. I look to movies, I look to novels, I look to different themes, I look to video games. I kind of fill it up and then I think about all of those things, let it digest, and then I start drawing. This is one of my designs that I literally hand painted every single room around on that costume. There's a lot of textures that I want. Sometimes I use a match of fabrics. I like to use things in different ways so that we have something totally different than anybody else has out there. I think that's my main goal. Everybody in this, especially this scare zone, is so different this year, but they also tie together. Like they are a band of the dead. So I'm really proud of this one.
So uniqueness too, Renee, and if the costumes are unique, the makeup's going to be unique for every single person.
Absolutely. When Mark brought this to us, and by us I mean there's a group of us that Mark goes to at the beginning before everybody else is back. That's me and one of my I just love her. We bounce ideas off of each other. Her name is Nina Browning. She's fantastic. She's here with us today. She's been back and she actually does Jinx the Fool. She does so many makeups throughout the park and we go back and forth. So when he brought this to us and he said cyberpunk, think cyberpunk zombies, immediately we got on Google and we just started pulling stuff up and bouncing ideas off of each other. And we're excited. We're super excited for this. Like, this scare zone is going to be nothing like anyone has ever seen before, but also, I have to say this because I don't think this is touched on enough. We can have the best costumes, we can have the most awesome set design, we can have the most wonderful makeup, but if we don't have these actors that are up here, her hand painting, him coming up with it, us brainstorming, and then bringing it to life. And of course, everybody that decorates the set. It's phenomenal. This is going to be phenomenal.
That was so well said. So as far as the layout and everything, Mark, can you speak to any of that? I have one slide up, which is the concept
So
here
yeah, that was the
for the
initial concept to start. There's so many more that you guys are not going to be able to see because obviously I want to surprise you guys. But it's spanning that. Oh, actually, go back if you don't mind.
Sorry.
So that's one of the initial character designs that I do. But Michelle was the first one to design the costume and that inspiration. That's why we work so well together. And like I said, we go to LA, we go to different things, and everything inspires us. So like for this area, obviously a year or two ago, we had there was a huge influx of cyberpunk stuff, thanks to a video game, to be honest with you. And with the futuristic type elements, we wanted it to be really gritty and yet vibrant, and there's going to be a lot of LED mixed into it. It's going to be just such a unique event area. It's gonna be one of my absolutely my favorite. Sorry, clowns. I love you guys, but this might be one of my new favorite areas.
I would say think high tech, low life.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's very industrial in the area with the scenic that we're doing. And there's a lot of custom and fun graffiti photo ops that we're going to be doing in the area. And yeah, it's just going to be, think of almost a days within a scare zone. I'm going to be honest with you. So we can't wait for you guys to check it out.
I'm very excited. You know, the footprint for the underground too is such an amazing footprint, so much space. It gives us so much creative room to really bring these scare zones to life as you guys are going through from area to area. So we are very excited for this one. I mean, Renee pretty much sold it, I think.
I think she did, yes. So yeah, just think, cyberpunk, zombies on acid is gonna be great.
Also adding new, we have a new show that we're adding into the Golden Bear Plaza called Brave Games, and Mark can speak to that as well.
Yeah, this one actually kicks off a little bit after we open, September 24th, and we have such a great cast and team for the show. But it's gonna be one of our most edgiest shows that we've ever done. It's actually literally gonna have, as you can see in the artwork, a crossbow act. We have fire jugglers. It's gonna be very, very unique, yet still creepy, but so much animation with the performers. It's gonna be fantastic.
Gut-wrenching, right?
Yes.
I saw a few little teasers and I was nervous. We're also adding another show, replacing our beloved Hypnotist is a Dark Mind Mentalist show.
Yes, that is actually going to be in the Gearworks Theater. It is a fantastic show directed by our amazing team at Imagination Entertainment, and they are such an amazing team with them, and it's so fun to work with them. And it's a dancer, very dark surf show mixed with a mentalist, and it's something we've never done before in the park, so I think it's going to be very entertaining for everyone. Lays.
Well, panel, do you guys have anything else you want to touch on? Anything I missed that you want to bring to this amazing audience and just think before we get into any Q&A?
My biggest thing is I just want to say to everyone at the park that's working hard right now and doing overnights right now to get this event operational. We can't thank them enough. So thank you for our amazing team. There's so many people behind the scenes that you don't get to see. And I just want to also we can't do this without our whole team and our amazing cast, our amazing makeup artists. This is the most makeup artists I will have this year, actually, Scott and I will have. We have so many makeup stations, it's not even funny. But it's going to be fantastic, and we can't wait for everyone to come out and see it.
And of course, all these Fright fiends we have here that love Fright Fest.
Yes, we love you guys.
Without you guys either. Well, I guess right now, you guys, we can open up to any Q&A that you guys have.
Hello, everybody. I'm back once again to talk about what I've experienced at Awaken the Spirits. Actually, right now, I'm at home. I have left the convention. It ended. It was amazing. We'll talk a little bit about my thoughts about the convention as a whole afterwards, but I do want to talk about what you've probably heard already on here, and that was the Six Flags Fright Fest panel. Now, Six Flags Fright Fest is coming back from September 11th to October 31st. I think that's the most days Fright Fest has ever happened. But nonetheless, fantastic panel giving us insight into this year's event and showcased a new scare zone, as well as had some familiar faces on stage with some monsters. Obviously, there's Innocents and the clowns that they have out there that are very iconic to their park and their events, so they had them on stage there and had their presence. It was always really fun to see them on the stage and once again be at a convention and actually get to see monsters, which was fantastic. But they did inform us that a lot of the mazes are returning, so like Red's Revenge is coming back, Condemned I want to say Condemned because there's an A on it, but Condemned, Vault 66 Unlocked, and then Aftermath 2 Chaos Rising, and Sewer of Souls, and Willoughby's Resurrected. Now, the one that sounds like is getting the most touch-ups is Aftermath 2 Chaos Rising, but they did say that all the other mazes are getting touch-ups in terms of, like, maybe some rooms are different monsters, things like that. I wish they would touch up more than that, but I mean, I can't really complain. Beggars can't be choosers. At least we have something to go to. But the exciting thing that they kind of announced was a brand new scare zone called The Dead Zone. And this is going to be a cyberpunk zombie scare zone that is located in the underground, which is right by West Coast Racers. Super exciting, actually. And they showed us some really cool concept art that is, bright light green and pinks and purples, and overall, it sounds like it's going to be a heavy black light scare zone outside. And the way that the creative director kind of described it was almost like an outdoor maze. So when I hear that, at least, the first thing that pops into my mind is similar to what Universal has done in the past in the Universal Plaza for, The Purge and things, or Blumhouse, where they've had a gauntlet of sorts, I guess is what they call it there at Universal. So it seems like an outdoor maze, maybe gauntlet-style scare zone for this new scare zone happening at Six Flags Fright Fest at Magic Mountain. So, I mean, overall, I'm excited. I really like that Fright Fest takes chances on their scare zones. It really feels like they're really pushing the envelope in terms of concept, which I really like, and experimenting with different things. I know in the panel they talked about getting inspiration from as simple as a color or a fabric and things like that. So I'm actually really, really excited to see this come to life at Fright Fest. Along with that, they have announced Grave Games as well as Dark Minds as two brand new shows coming to the event. So anything new at Fright Fest, I'm game for. So I actually really enjoy Fright Fest. I actually think they have some of the best prosthetic work in terms of the SoCal haunt theme parks. Nikki and I always have the opinion that we feel like Fright Fest has the best prosthetics. Queen Mary always had the best airbrush makeup. Knott's Berry Farm always has had the best scare zones, things like that. So that's kind of our opinion in that matter. But it was really fun to be able to see all the monsters back on stage once again, kind of allowing us to get a glimpse into Fright Fest. And then the other panel that I did, which was a little bit more depressing, was the Queen Mary's Dark Harbor, turning nightmares into reality with the Masterminds of Dark Harbor. This one definitely had this air of sadness to it, where it was kind of honoring the history of the event, talking about the monsters and the icons that were kind of established before the ones that we knew before. In 2010, I believe that the name of the icon that they used was Bundara, and she had two different sisters, and this was before we had the Captain, Graceful Gale, Half-Hatchet Henry, and all the other ones that we know and love. So it was interesting hearing kind of how the event evolved and changed and adding different icons, talking about the sliders and the monsters, things like that. And like I was saying, there was like this air of sadness to it where it was kind of, it almost felt like a eulogy almost for Dark Harbor. In the panel, they did say that they're aiming to reopen next year, so 2022. Realistically, I don't really see that happening based on the state of the ship, but you never know. But I'm not getting my hopes up. It's really, really sad to see the state of the ship and that it's in, and that it wasn't taken care of, and now it's millions and millions of dollars backed up to fix it, to get anybody on the boat again. So you never know what's going to happen, but I can't be disappointed, so I'm going to have to put my expectations aside and just hope that something good happens. But it was also very cool to hear the behind the scenes of how these people came up with these concepts and how much they love them, because there really is a love for the event, and there's a love for the character and the stories and the ship itself. So it was really fun to actually get to hear that from the creators themselves. And obviously in attendance was a lot of Queen Mary Dark Harbor monsters. So it was a very loud panel, lots of cheering. And it was cool because Peggy, who actually plays the ringmaster, was out of makeup and actually moderated the panel, which was kind of cool to see her out of makeup. And there was a guest appearance by the captain via an emoji on the screen, which was really funny. I mean, I guess the sad part is that we don't get that typical banter that you get when you have the captain and the ringmaster on the stage at the same time. But nonetheless, at least we had something, so I'm happy about that. But that was the last panel that I went to, and then I kind of just soaked in the rest of the show floor as much as humanly possible. I mean, it was crowded earlier in the day, but by the time that I got there after the panels, it was really, really easy to walk around. Purchased some more stuff. I got a Frankenstein Monsters t-shirt. I got some earrings for Nikki. I got some artwork. There was plenty of vendors. And let's talk a little bit about my feelings about the event as a whole. I think that Midsummer's team in putting together Awaken the Spirits did a phenomenal job. And like I had said before, this doesn't feel like a pop-up. It feels like its own full-fledged event. It was a lot, definitely a lot that went into it too. And I appreciate them for putting on an event that is going to help heal the community, because that's really what it comes down to. And it's interesting, and I didn't think about it until recently, but the idea of Awaken the Spirits, yes, the concept of the name is Awaken the Spirits, ghosts and ghouls and goblins, things like that, but we're awakening our spirits. You know, we've sat dormant for a year and a half, not having haunt or Halloween or really anything because of COVID-19, and now we have this event that's awakening us, and we're coming back to the season that we love, and we're celebrating it together. And I think ultimately a lot of what this event is helping spur on is healing and love and bringing us all back together, because honestly, this has been the first time that I've seen so many people in one spot that I consider family, my haunt family, and being able to give them hugs and talk to them, laugh over jokes, you know, experience these news pieces coming from the theme parks and things like that again. It's been a long time, and it was amazing to be able to have that again, because it was electric. It was an electric feeling in the air, being able to go onto the show floor, be with people, buy things, interact with people. It was so fresh and new and nice to have once again. Obviously, it's nothing new, but it felt new and fresh because we haven't done it in a year and a half. So big kudos to the team at Midsummer Scream for putting on this event that's absolutely phenomenal. David Markling, Claire Dunlap, Rick West, Gary Baker, all of them did a phenomenal job in producing this in a very short period of time. Obviously, I think like 2 months, something insane. So I absolutely could not applaud them more. I think that the mask mandate worked phenomenally. I mean, I think 99% of people were wearing them completely perfectly. Saw a couple noses, people eating on the side and things like that of the rooms. People walking around rarely drinking water or having a drink in their hand or eating their food. I did see people who worked at the event, who worked at the either Pasadena Convention Center or who worked for Midsummer, telling people to wear their mask correctly. So I felt extremely safe the entire time. Obviously, it was the first time I've been in a convention in a long time, so there was this sense of anxiety kind of that goes along with it, with the excitement. But I mean, I can only control myself. I can only see what I feel comfortable with. There were times where I didn't feel comfortable for sure, but that has a lot to do with what we've experienced over the last year and a half to 2 years of not really having anything. So these muscles these convention muscles that I haven't stretched in a long time are definitely sore, and I wasn't quite ready for it. But just kind of getting thrusted back into it was totally fine. And, I'm vaccinated. I wore a double mask the entire weekend. I never took them off. Not once. I think I took it off once for a picture, and I held my breath. I didn't breathe until I put the mask back on. So overall, I felt very, very safe. It was really nice to be back in a safe, fun environment. So overall, I'm just pumped. And if this is any indication of how Season Screamings is going to go, which is the next holiday-inspired event in December, then I'm all there for it. Absolutely love it. I know a lot of people who didn't get to go to this, so we're super bummed. If you're listening to this, buy your tickets for Season Screamings now. They are on sale. I think they're on sale now. But anyway, make sure you tune in to when they go on sale either way, because this was a phenomenal event. If anything, Season Screamings is going to be just as good, if not better. So thank you, Midsummer, for having us out to experience it and cover the event. Thank you, and huge shout out to all the White Bats who made it possible and helping us out. Huge shout out to all the vendors, the monsters, the presenters, Doug Barnes and his sexy voice setting up every single panel from the Season Pass podcast. Everybody who was involved in creating this thing, thank you so, so much. Hopefully you guys enjoyed our kind of live, on-location style episode that we did for Awaken the Spirits. If you definitely enjoyed this, let us know. Email us at themeparkduo@gmail.com to let us know if you enjoyed this type of episode, because we could do more in the future. If it's an event like a Scary Farm or Horror Nights, we could do it on location and record the reviews there, and we could talk about our experiences right after having had it. So do let us know. And if you guys haven't done it already, make sure you're following us on social media. We posted so much during the weekend on Twitter and Instagram and a little bit on Facebook. I can't do all three. I'm one man. But we posted so much. You can follow us at Theme Park Duo on pretty much all social media platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then, as I said, if you enjoyed the process, if you enjoyed the show, anything, do email us, let us know, and leave us a 5-star written review, guys, on iTunes. That helps us out. It's a free way to support the show, and it helps us out and brings us higher up in the standings, and it makes it easier for everyone to find us and enjoy us like you are right now. As always, everybody, thank you for enjoying our nonsense, and always remember, there's always a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. See ya.
Thanks for riding with the Theme Park Duo. Make sure to gather all your belongings before the end of the podcast. Bye-bye.